Hi, everybody, and welcome to Whisperers. My co-host today is Kirsten Gabini, and I'm Rory Brown. I'm going to give Kirsten a moment just to briefly introduce herself. But I'm Rory Brown. As I said, I'm the host, and I'll be taking and making sure that the journey we go on today is a safe one and that we can go to places that hopefully we feel stretches our imaginations a little bit. Um, Quite critically, the fourth industrial revolution is upon us, and all we know is that it's very mechanistic. The spaces that we'd like to play in is some people have already termed it the fifth industrial revolution, but I think that that's a misnomer. I'd rather call it the consciousness revolution. And that's what we're going to be exploring a little bit today. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Kirsten, as I said, my co host, and let her introduce herself quickly.
Thanks, Raw. Yes, and welcome to our guests. It's great to be here. I have a background in knowledge management, some academic work that I've done, I'm still busy doing, and I'm really interested in how we create new knowledge and what we term knowledge. So I'm interested in these as knowledge creating experiences and speaking to people who have insights and superpowers. And I'm very keen to listen to what our two guests have to say today. I work as a coach, I work as a hypno coach, and I do a few other things in terms of corporate management consulting. But today we're creating new knowledge. Thank you, Raw.
It's a pleasure, thank you. And definitely welcome to our two guests, Colin and Rinus. Some of you might recognize the names if I say it, Rinus Roux and Colin Smith. And hopefully you'll recognize it from the book that's currently published, Surviving Rotten Cheese, the latest publication. And without further ado, what I'm actually going to do is hand over to the two gentlemen to introduce themselves briefly. And I'll start with Colin. Colin, if you could take a second and introduce yourself to our viewers and other guests.
Yeah, well, hello everybody. Thanks for inviting me onto this show with my colleague Rinus Roux. Um, I would say that I've just begun my fourth life. My first life was as a young boy and a teenager and a university student and a graduate here in Johannesburg. I studied law and I practiced law for about 5 years at the Joburg Bar as an advocate. And then I decided to go traveling in 1995. And I traveled and ended up in Chicago. And I began my second life, where I spent 15 years in Chicago
Wow.
and got to know the US very well. I can confidently claim I'm an expert in the US because I haven't only traveled across the country very widely, but I've lived among the Americans, which is very different to just visiting like a tourist for a couple of weeks instead of, oh, I've been to New York.
Yes.
You've got to live among them to understand just what that country is all about. Then I began my third life in 2009 when I stopped over in Geneva on my way back to South Africa. And I got offered a job in the United Nations. And I lived in Geneva at Switzerland for 5 years and then moved across the border, right across the border into France for another 5 years. So I spent 10 years in that magnificent environment, unbelievable, fantastic environment there. And then this year in March, uh, I was afraid of getting trapped when the COVID virus started moving west from Italy, and it was moving quite quickly. And I could tell that France was going to get locked down. And I decided to get out and come back to South Africa, which in retrospect turned out to be quite a good decision when you see what's happened in Europe.
Yeah.
So my
Absolutely.
background is in law. My background is in law, but my true intellectual strength is working with the English language. I'm an independent writer and an editor, and I
Wow.
translate from French to English. But I've written quite extensively. I published my first book in 2019 and the second edition in 2020. It was a karate-related book, pure
Yes.
non-fiction. I've had a long karate career. I started in 1978, and I'm still going strong in the Shotokan style. I'm 60, and I'll never give it up because of what it
Wow.
does for me mentally and physically
Hmm.
and spiritually. And now I've begun this my fourth life back in Johannesburg, and um, it was just fortuitous that I should have come across Rinus because we knew each other, but very from a distance. In 1983, we crossed paths in the karate world at the South African
Okay.
University Championship. I don't remember him very clearly, but then we hooked up last year when he saw some of my writings. And then when I came back to Johannesburg this year, he suggested that perhaps we could collaborate on this creation that he had in his mind, this work of genius in his mind. And I helped him to write it. So my role was to write it. So that is, in a nutshell, that's who I am.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So I love the fact that you come from a karate or kind of martial arts background. It's that discipline that sets you free. It's absolutely I love that. So thank you very much, and welcome to the show, and welcome to the experience that we're going to create. Rinus, over to you.
Thank you, Rory. So yeah, I'm a bit younger than Colin. I'm 55, and we I was born in a small town in the northwest, and at a very young age, they found out that I'm stupid. They, they measured my IQ, and I came out at about 92 or 94, and I really struggled because of that. And then
Yes.
in standard seven, they redid the IQ, and I never forget the day when they redid the IQ test. They called my dad in, and the school that I was in, when your dad get calls in, you're in big trouble. Eh? So I spoke with my dad with the headmaster, and the headmaster said, "We've got a problem sending your child to Potch University." Now, I
Oh
thought,
my
oh my God,
goodness.
now they're going to put me in a bottle and study me for the rest of my life. Luckily, it wasn't for that. I had to go and do another IQ test. They then found out that I do not have a low IQ. I've actually got a especially high.
Sure.
Um, Only 5% of the population of the world has got. And my journey began to make the switch from being stupid to being clever. And that's I
Wow.
despise psychological testing because I was stupid for a long time in my life. And if you woke me up after they found out that I was clever at 2 o'clock in the morning and asked me, "Are you clever or stupid?" I will tell you I'm stupid because I really struggled.
Sure.
And that went on up until matric. And a teacher got hold of me and she said to me, "You must change your thinking." And I went, "How do I change my thinking? I mean, I think, well, we all think." And all of this was new to me. By this time, we have a common friend, Colin, and I, a guy by the name of Andre Venter, who's also in karate, and he started speaking to me about this. And then I got interested in what does it take to change the mind. I went to university. Well, I finished matric with 5 A civils and a B.
Sure.
That's stupid. I went to university. I completed too many degrees, which I will sell if you want some because I don't use them at the moment. Um, the moral of the story was that it was to change the thinking. I then studied business, swapped over to psychology, did a master's in narrative psychology, which is telling stories and talking
Yes.
about it, and started lecturing. I lectured in New York, I lectured in South Africa, but my passion was born because if you change thinking, you can change everything. And I'm not obsessed with the mind because if you do not have the self confidence in the heart to change the mind, you're not going to change the
Okay.
mind. So all of this
Absolutely.
started intertwining with one another. And I started reading madly about spirituality, about all sorts of things. And then later in my life, I went through a very bad patch. I lost my family. And I came back from there and I wrote a book called Sculpted by Grief. And after that book, I wanted to write something lighter. And when this epidemic came out, I read a piece of Colin on Facebook, and I thought, yo, man, this is beautiful. And it is so well written. And I'm Afrikaans. So when I write, you can, in all my other books, you can pick up that I'm Afrikaans. Really, you can. And that's why I opted into to have someone like Colin, where I give the information and he then change it into beautiful language. And I really truly hope that this relationship, because I've got another 20 books in me, I've written 30. But I really hope that this relationship can go on, because that's what I would like to. I would like to have that person that helps you, you know. And we are good friends, and we connect very well. We understand each other well. So that's how the book was born.
Wow. The intros just floored me. You guys are both fascinating people. Rinus, what I absolutely loved about your kind of backstory, um, let's call it your origin story, like they do in the comic books, both of you. Like, because I agree with Kirsten, we kind of, what we're looking for here is the kind of superhero, but the guy that doesn't wear a cape. Um, so both of you, but Rinus, your backstory, I just love the fact that it's all about kind of the mind and being able to unlock the ability or the mindset to be able to change. That to me, that's one of my passions as well. I come out of the learning and development space, and so I completely, it resonates with me 100%. So thank you and welcome. And to the guests out there, I think you will agree with me that we're in the presence of two consciousness pioneers, individuals that are literally trying in their own little ways to be able to change consciousness. And that's when I'm going to come to the next question. And Rinus, I'll actually start with you. When did you, as an individual or together with Colin, get that moment of aha where you created a ha or a aha, the character that was kind of going to change the consciousness of people in terms of the disruptors that have hit us?
Rory, so when lockdown started, I went into terrible depression. I sat on I've got one of these lazy boy chairs. I was sitting there. I thought, what the hell am I going to do? My cheese is gone. I had 37 or 38 talks lined up for the year, all of them cancelled, no income. I went into shock. And then I wanted to tell the world how would people be affected, from the president to the sick, to a student. How would they be affected by this? Because I've been so affected by it. But I can't tell them, because I'm in depression and I'm in South Africa and I'm part of the world. And I can't have another character of China, because that's where it started, or in Japan or wherever. So I then realized that I'll have to create a character that is not from planet Earth, so that he can help planet Earth. So if we're all in trouble on planet Earth, we're so deep in the, what do they say, so deep in the bush, we can't see the, Colin? You can't see the wood from the trees, or what's that saying?
You can't see the wood for the trees, yeah.
That's it. And then I created After Aha. And I thought, and because both Colin and I have got an affinity for the East, for Japan, and for the karate side. So a master for me is somebody that's, and Colin can tell you about my pet hate when these karate guys call themselves masters, but they've just got egos. So for me, it's about that master, that real master, who's got very little ego and that can speak the truth. And even if you don't like it, well, that's the truth. What are you going to do with it? And that's what I try to do with the book, to get the truth out. But that doesn't come from me or from Colin. It must come from that third creature. What do you call it, Colin? That mythical creature.
A little fictional character.
Yeah.
Almost like an avatar that's representing the consciousness you're trying to get across, or the change that you're trying to make.
That's how it came about.
Excellent.
Can I jump in, Roux?
Of course you can, Kirsten. I was going to ask if you have any questions.
So I'm very interested that Rinus has a narrative therapy or narrative psychology background, and I really want to jump off that platform. because I must say, when I looked at the book, I thought, wow, that's interesting. I like the reference to the cheese. But when I saw finding a new normal in a chaotic world, I thought, oh my word, who's normal? And I started thinking about Foucault and the fact that he was talking about, how normalization can be so restrictive, and what is the standard of normal? And when we say the new normal, what are we talking about? Whose new normal is it going to be? How is the new normal going to control us as much as the old normal did? And so I was concerned that you were maybe going to be defining a new normal, and I was worried about that. So what is your response to the fact that we don't want a new normal? Please excuse us from this new restrictive normal definition, and whose definition might it be?
Yeah. Kirsten, I think the psychological definition of normal, I had the privilege to get lectured by Professor Daplow, who's an amazing psychologist. And he used to say to us that the word normal comes from norm. So what is the norm? So in the Eskimos, the night before they get married, they spend the night with their mother-in-law. So she teaches them the man all the erotic stuff that he must learn to be with the woman. For them that's normal. So what is normal? Normal is the average of the people, and I don't count myself into that average. So I create my own normal, and with people like you, when we are in conversation or when we are together, we create that normal. And unfortunately, that big organizations in government sets out a certain kind of pace, follow that. That's people like us always pushing the envelope a little bit to say, but this normal can be different. It doesn't need to be. Everybody doesn't need to be in this to move forward. We can have pockets of different normal to move forward. Does that make sense?
It does, and I'm curious, what is Master Aha? And there's a beautiful illustration of him here. What is Master Aha telling us about this normal that we're speaking about now?
I think he would say that whoever you are, you have to find what sits with you. What is it that sits with you that you can live? Whether you're a doctor and you believe in euthanasia, or whether you believe in whether if you are a Christian or whether you are a Buddhist, what is your value system, and then find your normal in that. And it's very important to define that value system, because we are only true to our highest values. So if you can find your value system and you know what your values are, then you can move into your own space. It's when you don't know and you are influenced by money and you're influenced by status and ego and those kind of things that walks your normal.
Interesting.
Sure. I absolutely love some of the kind of analogies that you've made there. My one question though is, and I'm going to throw this to Colin. I was looking at your bio, and you've got a bit of a legal background. Um, and my question is, in terms of the kind of shift that Rinus is talking about in the world, and kind of how this new normal will evolve, and that evolution, in my opinion, doesn't always happen over a long period of time, and that COVID has proven that to us. It can happen almost instantaneously.
Okay.
In terms of your background as a lawyer, what drew you to this kind of almost radical thinking about the character that that expresses the aha moments? What was it that actually sparked off your interest in this entire? Because obviously, as an author, you would have found something that interested you, and you went, okay, this is it. What was that?
For me, it was when I came back here to South Africa and I spoke to family members and friends. And I could see they were, to a man and to a woman, consumed with stress. They were all consumed with stress. What are we going to do now? We've been struck by this COVID thing. The impact is debilitating. Nobody has been spared. They were starting to freak out. Some were getting mentally ill. Some were getting physically ill. A couple of my mates were hospitalized. They just weren't well at all. And I think it was just fortuitous that I should have hooked up with Rinus at the time that this was happening. And I think he created Master Aha, but from Master Aha, I could tell that Rinus had these nuggets of wisdom, and we had to find a way to communicate them to people in such a way that it could actually grab their attention and galvanize them into action, and to get them out of this seemingly endless pit of despair, because that's what it looked like to me. I was able to keep away from this despair because, Rinus talks about a value system. There's no question in my mind that my martial arts background, my very deep involvement in karate as a do, not as a jutsu, not just as techniques, but as a way of life, was able to galvanize me to keep my discipline, to keep fit, don't wallow and languish in self-pity and, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I'm also facing difficulties. We all are. But it's up to us, and I think that's where Master Ha's great wisdom comes in. It's up to us to make a conscious decision about what are we actually going to do about it. It's no good sitting on the porch, looking into the sunset with your glass of wine and thinking, well, this is the end. That's not going to work at all, because it's only going to spiral down into even deeper depression, deeper senses of despair. And then what do we do about that? So for me, the nuggets of wisdom that Rinus was able to produce via these recordings, because that's how he wrote the book. He was recording his thoughts, sending me these clips via WhatsApp, via these voice notes, and I'd listen, and I could tell, here is the brain, here is the intellectual power.
You're looking for the word genius.
Well, I used the word genius. I've already used the word genius, but it was. No, I'm not blowing smoke here. That's what it was. This was the intellectual power that we need, because I don't want to read some editorial in the Sunday Times. That doesn't do anything for me. I don't want to read that. I don't want to read something in Scope magazine. I wanted to read what I was hearing from Rinus was the kind of intellectual power that I thought would go down so well with the general populace in our country. And when I was listening to these recordings, making my notes, then I could see this is how we're going to be able to communicate what, to take the Burt Bacharach song, what the world needs now. It's not love. It's love and this galvanizing into a new action to find the balance that we so desperately need now in times of terrible upheaval. I mean, really, we are in deep, deep trouble. And it doesn't have to be that way at all. I don't believe it doesn't have to be that way. If we can just stay calm, get in touch with ourselves, whether you're religious or not, it doesn't matter. For me, it's just getting in touch with the universe and letting the universe take control and just let everything go.